I grew up without a father. My mother passed away from AIDS when I was about 10. We didn't have money. We didn't have much of anything at all. The first 5-6 years with my biological mother, she had serious drug problem, heroin, cocaine. Basically, I think anything she could get her hands on. I can remember us living in just one-bedroom apartment together, just not having much of anything. Didn't have really any furniture. Didn't have a bed. Food was scarce. It's just she would kind of just disappear for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. I'd be there by myself, wearing just my tidy whities and maybe a t-shirt.
Wow. How old were you?
I was 4 or 5. Back in the day when men were really men, they were teaching their sons how to be men. My take is that my father probably doesn't even know I exist. I can live with that. No harm, no foul.
Is that what you think?
I don't know if he's alive, if he's dead, where he is, who he is. Being overseas, the firefights didn't really bother me. The stuff that bothers me is seeing dead bodies, seeing people that were blown up and blown to pieces, and moving those bodies, and seeing the body in such an unnatural state.
Yeah.
Getting blood all over you. When I got home, it was 6 to 8 months of just drinking all the time, every day. As soon as she'd go around the corner, let me go in the freezer and sneak a shot. I didn't like to feel anything. Knowing what happens in other countries, and that people just don't respect it, they don't understand it. They take what we have for granted. Seeing a truck of 8 Afghan National Army soldiers just blown to shit doing our work, that's sad to me. That's 8 guys who didn't go home with their family. The people who don't know, these are human beings over there.
Hey there, before you start this episode of the podcast, please do us a huge favor. Click the like and subscribe button on YouTube, and if you're listening on a different platform, leave us a follow and a review. It helps us grow the channel, and it helps us get these incredible stories to more people. Thank you for all of your support. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Welcome back to the Present Fathers Podcast. My guest is Denny Paul. We've been putting this one in the works for quite a while, and before I fully introduce you, I want to say it was really awesome to be able to have you come in a day early, get to know you, get dinner, all that kind of stuff. And I'm pumped to unpack your story here, brother. So thank you for making the journey here to Nashville. Thank you for coming to the show, and welcome.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. This has been, I think you were the first guy really to reach out to me when I started my podcast and started building my brand and my platform. It's been, I think, 5 months in the making for me just coming up here. I was like, when we first had the discussion, you were like, we got to have you on and whatever. And I was like, all right, I'm coming up there, or down there rather, to do this. I don't want to just, do this virtually or whatever. I wanted to meet you in person, but I very much appreciated you being the first guy reaching out, showing interest in what it was that I was looking to push, me and Mike, with our podcast. And thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
great to be here.
It's awesome to have you on. I love the name of yours, Be the Standard Podcast. Amen, man. Men need to be the standard. So, lots to unpack in your story. I know, like some others we know, it starts pretty early for you. So why don't you start with your upbringing? Because I know that there was a lot of difficulty there, and obviously played a huge role in your upbringing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Massachusetts guy, Worcester.
Masshole,
yeah, 100%. Grew up in Worcester. Ended up, I grew up without a father. My mother passed away from AIDS when I was about 10. But prior to that, even just going back to that, we didn't have money. We didn't have, much of anything at all.
Yeah.
Just spent the first 5-6 years with my biological mother. She had serious drug problems, just heroin, cocaine. Basically, I think anything she could get her hands on, she was doing. And just, very rough time in her life. I think she had me when I was maybe 20.
Okay.
19 or 20. So she was very young, unprepared.
Right.
Not in a position, obviously, to have kids. But, I can remember us living in just one-bedroom apartment together and just not having much of anything. Didn't have really any furniture, didn't, have a bed. Food was scarce. It's just, she would kind of just disappear for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. And, I'd be there by myself, wearing just, my tidy whities and maybe a t-shirt.
Wow. How old were you when that
I was
happened?
like 4 or 5.
Holy cow.
And it sucks because it's like that's one of the few things that I remember about her. She got better as I got, into my, 8, 9, 10. She started to like, kind of heal herself and get into a better place. So I do have some positive memories of her, for those last few years with holidays and whatnot. I was never in her custody after age 5.5, 6, whatever it was.
Okay.
Because eventually, after one of those stints of her going on her benders or whatever she was off doing for 3-4 days at a time, she eventually it caught on with the state or somebody reported her or something. But I ended up in foster care, and I'm very fortunate to have had a great foster mom and a great foster family, and I was taken into just an ideal situation for somebody with my background.
Yeah.
You hear the horror stories about people who go to these families with abuse and tragedy and all these other things that they have to deal with in addition to already being placed there under terrible circumstances, right? So eventually I ended up with the state foster care, and then when I was about 7 or 8, my aunt started the process of adoption, and because she felt like, this is my sister's son, I should adopt him, I should bring him into my family and whatnot. But, of course, at the time, she was going through her own shit of the divorce and dealing with, an asshole that she was married to. So basically, it took about 2 years, I think, for her through the adoption process to all go from, inception to fruition, right? And she... I've always been grateful that she adopted me and took me in. And, I mean, that's kind of how it started. And, there's just been a lot of shit.
Well, and so we were talking, you had mentioned that like when your mom would leave you at home, it was like, hey, just look at these magazines and stuff. Like, can you talk about that too? Because obviously that... Yeah,
she would actually take me to this place that I remember it vividly. She would take me to, I don't know if it was a friend across the street, a friend down the street, or whatever. But we'd go to this place where she would essentially just hang out with her friends, do drugs. So I'd sit there and watch her do drugs, and she would basically put me in like this galley kitchen where you couldn't really see anything outside of the kitchen other than like maybe a little dining room, but they were in a living room across the way. So she would try to stick me almost in the opposite corner of the house so that I couldn't see what was going on.
Right.
And, she'd be like, oh, look at those magazines. Well, that stack of magazines next to me was just piles and piles of like pornography. And so I would just sit there. I'm 5 years old, and I would just sit there and look at these things and be like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I liked it.
Right.
But, I remember one time in particular, I snuck out, and one of her friends gave me a sip of her drink. And at the time, it looked like orange juice. And so I took a sip of it, and it ends up tasting awful. Well, looking back at it, it was orange juice and vodka probably, right? Yeah. So I took a sip of that, and I remember my mom just freaking out because even though she was doing stupid shit, she didn't want me exposed to it. She didn't want me to see her doing it. Yeah. And so I just remember her, after I took that sip, she was just pissed. She flipped out. There was all kinds of violence and chaos after that, in that particular event. But yeah, it was wild. And then all the time, I'm just wondering, like, where's dad?
Yeah.
How come my friends have dads? Why don't I have one?
Right.
So that was another part of my story that just has always bothered me, is just growing up without a father. Because I said this on my podcast recently, is when you grow up without a father or, an absentee father or whatever, you have to find that, or you find that you have to teach yourself to, do all kinds of things. You have to learn how to shave. You have to learn how to fight. You have to teach yourself, how to treat women, how to have respect for men, look them in the eye, shake their hand. You don't learn these things just organically. It's not an organic function to just be a man, right? You look back at history.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
You got to be refined. Yeah.
And you look back in history, back in the day when men were really men, they were teaching their sons how to be men. Yeah. And they were there.
Yeah.
There wasn't none of this like, oh, I'm going to run from the problem. I'm going to run from my responsibility. Or, you know, my take is that my father probably doesn't even know I exist. Fine, I can live with that. No harm, no foul. But
is that what you think? Is that
so you have my point with that
you have
is
no idea?
No clue. I don't know if he's alive, if he's dead, where he is, who he is. So I mean, I can't hold him accountable for that. My guess is he doesn't know. Do I know that for sure? No.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel better to think that he probably doesn't know.
Right.
Like, I don't want to put any extra stress of resentment or hate or any of that on myself if I don't have to.
Right.
So for me, it's easier to just process it in a way that makes me believe that he doesn't know. So that's what I tell myself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, you know, growing up and seeing, you know, friends with dads and, you know, them having these, you know, I've never been the type of person in any capacity to be jealous. You know, if you have more than me, great.
Yeah.
If you have a better relationship, great. If you have a better father, great. So, but I would see like my friends with their dads, and they, you know, you catch these moments, of them, you know, just bonding or going through something, and you know, really just like embracing one another in that relationship and fostering that. And you're like, fuck, that's got to be awesome. Yeah, like it's jealousy, but it's not jealousy in a resentful way.
It like puts into perspective how big that hole is for you.
Yeah,
it's like having it be shoved right in your face.
Yeah, 100%. It's yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like, and that was your whole childhood, right? You felt that way, so
yeah. So I was always like that when I'd see my friends with their dads, and just wondering, like, you know, why don't I have that?
Yeah,
and I have a lot of pain in just even saying those things, because my aunt who adopted me, she had a husband, and him and I have a great relationship today. They've been married 30 whatever years. He's probably the sweetest, most genuine, best guy.
Okay,
loved him to death. But he's not my father.
Yeah.
And he didn't function as one. He wasn't my dad. He was a great provider. He was a truck driver. He's on the road all the time. Okay. So he couldn't be a dad if he wanted to.
Right.
And he also had a shitty upbringing himself, so he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
But is he the kindest, awesome, just great guy? Fuck yeah, he is. We had dinner, you know, me, him, my mother, my girlfriend, probably a month and a half ago. And the podcast came up. My mom asked about it, and you know, he looked at me and was like, just told me how proud he was. You know, and that was awesome. It was awesome to hear that from him, because I've never called him dad. Yeah. I just can't do it. But you know, I feel bad when I say, oh, I didn't have a dad, when I had someone. Yeah. But not really. Right. So that it's tough to wrestle with that sometimes.
Yeah, it's super I mean, there's no easy answer, right? Because it is a situation that shouldn't exist, right? But like, I think we were talking about this last night, but we live in the world of what is, not what should be. And the reality is, you know, your story is all too common, right? Yeah. There's hundreds of millions of kids just like you where that's their reality. And, you know, that's what we're trying to ultimately accomplish with this show, and like what you're trying to accomplish with Be the Standard is for men to step up. But let's get back to like your upbringing. So clearly huge void right there. Lot of, I assume, kind of self-doubt, like, who am I? Like, talk to us a bit how you struggled and how that started looking as you grew up, and physically you started looking like a man, but maybe internally you weren't really yet. Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I was always just looking to, like, just certain things as I was developing and growing up and trying to figure out who I was. And there was a lot of questions about like I don't have a father. I don't carry his name. Like, I don't know who the fuck I am. There was so much of that growing up. So I would just look to things like I said, with my upbringing and everything that I went through, I was very easily able to identify what I didn't think was right and what I didn't want. Okay. So I knew like the characteristics and traits that weren't okay. Right. I had, you know, an alcoholic grandfather, abusive grandfather that I ended up loving to death, by the way. Great guy. But he set all the wrong standards and examples, I think, when I was young. So I would look to all these outside sources to, you know, how can I be a better man? And one of the biggest ones, and this is going to sound weird or corny or whatever, I don't know, but one of the things that I would look for is like, I'd see quotes in movies. I'd learn from like different characteristics in movies or sports figures. I can remember like looking and seeking out like Michael Jordan quotes about hard work and consistency and not quitting. And, then I'd watch a Denzel movie, Remember the Titans or something, right?
Yeah.
And I'd get inspired by that. So I was always looking, and I had like a keen ear or a keen sense for, what I wanted. And I would hear things and try to like think to myself, like, okay, how do these apply in all these other aspects of life, right? How can I take, Michael Jordan's, analogy about, taking all these shots and missing all these shots and failing over and over, and that's why I succeed. How can I take, that basketball analogy and carry it into life?
Right.
Oh, well, you have to try all these things. You have to put in the effort. You're going to fail, but then you'll succeed, right? So I would take all of these things as even a teenager and process them in that way. And I think that's how I ended up being just a highly competitive person. I think that's how I ended up being just motivationally driven.
Yeah.
And I feel like I had to teach myself a lot.
Right.
And didn't, maybe I had coaches because I played a lot of sports I had coaches that were influential, and I'd see how they were with their sons and things like that. But I never really felt like I had that father figure to go to or that go-to guy because I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and that's it's so challenging for a developing young man to not have that. So you went to where you could, right? Movies, athletes, all that kind of stuff. At least it was something to aspire to. Obviously, that changed a lot of your life, right? Not having a father figure. We were talking last night. You said, you started college, you kind of quit, and then joined the Army. Is that the sequence of events there? So talk to me about that. Did you do it just because it was something you wanted to do? Do you feel called to it? Like, what was kind of the driving motivations initially?
Yeah, it's funny. I did 3 years of college. The story is I kind of just ran out of money, couldn't afford to go to school anymore.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm going to take a year off, and I'll go work, and then I'll go back to school after a year. And then after that, as I'm going through that year off, I'm working at the paint counter at Home Depot.
Okay.
And, in walks an Army guy.
All right.
He needs some paint mixed. And he's in recruiting. So we start talking, and, he mentions that, they're paying off student loans, which I had enough of.
Yeah.
They're paying off student loans. They're giving a $20,000 signing bonus. All of these benefits. And I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And I had always kind of been curious about the military. I'd always wondered, like, oh, could I do it? Is it for me?
Yeah.
And the answer was always like, yeah, I don't know if it's for me. Right. But,
I want to pull that thread a little bit. What exactly were you like, I don't know if it's for me? Was it fear, or was it like...
It was, no, I don't even think it was fear. I just think it was like, is it like the movies? Like, are guys going to be screaming at me all the time?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like...
I didn't really know what the culture was.
I don't want to be a part of that. It was more of
that.
Okay.
It was like, I just don't know if that's for me.
Right.
And then I get into the military, and I find out, like, you dumbass going into the Guard, like, this is for you. You should have went full time. You should have tried something a lot harder because this is actually what you're built for.
Gotcha.
And so I kind of, after I got in, I kind of felt like I fucked myself because I put myself in shackles because now I'm tied to a Guard unit that's nearly impossible to get out of because now we're in 9/11 and our op tempo is fucking every 2 years.
Right.
So now I feel like I'm just there.
So what year did you join?
I joined in 06.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Like right in the thick of it.
Right. So I got out of basic training in 2006,
so
December.
You're still in BDUs and everything.
Just got ACUs right when I got in.
Okay.
They had just, I think they had just become a thing. My first ever uniform was BDUs. I think I wore it once, and then when I got to basic, I had the ACUs.
Gotcha.
Which were terrible uniforms.
What? You mean you don't want to blend into gravel or grandma's couch?
Wow.
It's the worst.
And all that fucking Velcro.
I still have just side tangent, I have boxes full of all my stuff from active duty, right? It's all ACU. And I'm like, I opened up a box the other day, I was like, this stuff is so ugly. It's the worst uniform the Army's ever had.
It's the worst. It's funny, when I got out, I got my blouse
Yeah, like a
framed.
shadow box. Yeah,
Framed.
you know, like, it looks
and
terrible.
It's got all my shit. I'm like, this is the ugliest fucking thing ever. It's hanging in my basement, and it'll never see like a real room.
See if they go get it remade with the new one.
Yeah, that's maybe. It's just those things.
It is so bad. Sorry, didn't mean to totally throw you off there, but I'm just
all good.
I'm trying to see how old you are. Really, is what it was.
Yeah, I'm 41.
I'm messing with you.
But yeah, no. So I did. I joined the Army just basically for the benefits.
Okay.
And then again, I just felt like I kind of screwed myself.
But you realize it's something you're really well suited for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It ended up being something that I was really good at. Something I really enjoyed. After I got out of that, kind of.
Were you feeling sorry for yourself a little bit?
No,
I should have
after
done.
I got out of that phase of just being a private and making the stupid mistakes.
Oh, okay.
Once I got beyond that, my career just went in a totally different direction. It was awesome.
Was it because someone kind of pulled you out of, you're like, hey man, look, you have potential if you apply yourself? Did someone be that guy for you?
Yeah. So what happened was I had a first sergeant. We had drill one weekend. I skipped it, and
which for those listening,
you
can't do without approvals.
Yeah, you don't skip.
You don't just get to not show up. Yeah.
But I did. I skipped my drill. Showed up the next month. My first sergeant was a former Marine recon guy, kind of a no bullshit kind of a guy. Just said all these nice things to me about, hey, you have potential. I see a lot in you. This is after he jacked me up against the wall. Gave me some wall-to-wall counseling, as he called it.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
He just kind of set me straight with that. And what was funny is I showed up the following month after skipping, and he promoted me. He said, I have orders to promote you. He's like, I could rip them up. And he goes, but I'm going to promote you. He goes, don't fuck me over like that again. And
but he kind of had he kind of became that father figure you needed to be like, hey man, look, this is I see what you can be, but you can't do these wrong things.
He became a positive, strong male role model. And, even though I was 23 years old at the time, he became somebody that I really looked up to. And then even militarily after that, my best friend Mike, who I do the podcast with, I worked for him, and he became that positive, strong guy for me.
That's awesome.
And now he's my best friend. Yeah. I don't look at him like, oh, he's like a dad figure.
Right.
He's more like an older brother.
He's someone you needed.
Yeah.
For sure.
And he's just awesome. And so a lot of these great guys, and I feel like I've done a good job of that my entire life, is surrounding myself for the most part with people who are just quality human beings. I've never really ran with the wrong crowd. Yeah. Or been that kind of guy.
And is that because you saw how destructive it can be, and you just kind of decided for yourself from a very young age that that's just not an option for me?
Yeah, I've always been able to identify exactly what I don't want, and I can read people pretty good. I think, I can meet a guy and know if this guy's gonna be a positive influence on me or not. And I just think I did a good job of just picking my spots and picking the right people around me. Okay. Because I knew that I knew what happened if you hung around with the wrong people, and it was always in the back of my mind that's how my mom ended up fucked up, was just hanging around with the wrong people, doing stupid shit. Gotcha. And I kind of just always had it in my head, and in the back of my head was if I hang out with these people, I'm going to end up like my mother. I'm going to end up on drugs. I'm going to end up whatever. And it's on the contrary to that, I've never tried a drug. Right. I've always just been afraid of it. I've never tried a cigarette. I've always just known what didn't seem right and I didn't like. So yeah, that's kind of it.
Sorry, appreciate you sharing that, and I didn't want to completely derail your story, but so okay, good. So that first sergeant played a huge role in kind of shifting you and getting you to rise to the occasion in a sense.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it sounds like the overwhelmingly positive experience for you to join the Army and kind of gave you something to work towards and to build self-confidence and whatnot. But I know that you did deploy how many times?
Just once.
Okay, just once. But so I know that you had some struggles afterwards too. So if you want to talk about it a little bit, the deployment and just kind of set the stage and stuff, I know you got to do some pretty awesome stuff based off of the team you were a part of. But I'd also like to kind of get to the aftermath too.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've talked about it a bunch about you know, the guys that I was able to work with and some of the stuff we did was really cool and impactful. I thought in the province we were in Afghanistan, I thought we did a good job of, you know, actually trying to do good things.
Yeah.
And
what year was this?
This was 2010, 2011.
Okay.
But yeah, it was cool. Like my senior enlisted advisor and commander of our PRT were both SEALs. We had 4 guys from SEAL Team 8 that were on our FOB that came out with us whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
So it was basically anytime we were going anywhere where we thought it could be, you know, kinetic.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're coming with you guys. And of course we weren't gonna be like, no, like, yeah,
please,
definitely.
yeah, you're welcome.
I got 2 seats in my truck.
Yeah.
You guys are staying back. But no, it was cool to be able to work with those guys and that caliber of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And the coolest part about it was that they didn't treat us like anything less. They were just awesome.
That's cool.
So it was a great experience just being able to work with those kinds of guys. And you know, I'm friends with those guys today.
That's awesome.
You know, 13 years later.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to meet them and foster those friendships and keep those going. But for me, it was, and I'm not trying to sound a certain way, but, you know, being overseas, the firefights didn't really bother me. That stuff wasn't really it for me.
Well, you expected it, right?
Yeah, it's. I feel like you just fall back on your training, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay, getting shot at. Where's the cover? But
Right.
I remember the first time I got shot at, and I was like, holy shit, like this is actually happening. We were in a village in Wagez in Ghazni province, and I remember being pissed because my platoon leader and Mike, he was our platoon sergeant at the time. They put me in charge of this overwatch position, right? So they were going into this village, and they put me in this overwatch position over here, and I had a sniper team, my truck, and so it was me, my driver, my gunner, the sniper team.
Okay.
They took my other dismounts and brought them into the village. So I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm just fucking out here watching this, you know, doing Overwatch. This sucks. I remember being pissed. And so we had our truck up here in the Overwatch position. Then there was another truck down here that was kind of facing into the like right into the street going into the village.
Okay.
And so they were kind of just securing that and whatever. And at one point we're there for maybe an hour, not even.
Okay.
And I can't get comms with my buddy George's truck. He's named George.
Must be a great guy.
Solano, yeah. So I can't get comms with Solano. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm dismounted and I start walking towards this truck. And there's probably maybe 100 meters between my truck and his, maybe 2. Probably not 2. But I get about halfway there. The radio starts to work. I start to get him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, cool. Gotcha. Thanks. And then I turn around, I start walking back. About 5, 6 seconds later, boom, and I felt it. I'm like, what the fuck? So I just started scanning. I took a knee right there, started scanning, figure out what the hell was going on. And then I just started getting shot at, like rounds impacting at my feet. Like at one point a rock hit my leg and it stung so hard that I thought I like got shot.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? And so I sprinted back to my truck, got behind my truck, and the sniper position just ended up getting lit up. And I still to this day don't know how either one of those guys are alive, but they didn't get shot. They didn't get hit. I still can't believe it, but our whole position was just getting barraged. And that was the first time I ever got shot at. And I was like, okay, so this war shit's real.
Yeah.
It's fucking
It's
real.
disorienting.
Yeah.
Was the, were there like valleys and stuff, or like mountains and stuff, or was it pretty flat?
It was pretty flat in that area.
Just because, I had a very similar, like, disorienting experience, like, the sound, because we were up against, like, a cliff face. Mm-hmm. The sound was reverberating off of the wall right behind me so loud, I thought we were being ambushed from behind and above. Yep. And so I literally started, like, turning around, and they were like, no, sir, that way. And then I saw the muzzle flashes, and I was like, oh, that's embarrassing a little bit, but... it's weird because like my brain convinced me it's behind you, turn around or you're going to die. It's not like I had a conversation with myself, but like that survival instinct.
Well, once you get shot at, like your first instinct is to figure out where the fuck it's coming from.
Right, yeah.
And if you think it's behind you, then it's behind you.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know.
But it's very disorienting because it's like
even if you're getting shot at from over here,
right,
it doesn't fucking matter. Like the noise can still sound like it's coming from behind you.
Right.
That shit echoes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I remember feeling was like, Where's this shit coming from?
Right.
And where's my closest cover? I knew right then and there, because I was in an open position, that I just need to find cover. So naturally, I just sprinted back to my truck, but I didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah.
I had no fucking clue. But what's funny about that mission is we finally get and as we're getting engaged in our position, they're getting lit up in the village too.
Like
so
complex ambush type of thing.
Oh yeah. So the RPG is what started the ambush.
Okay.
You hear the boom, and then they just started coming at us, which means that was setting off the secondary ambush in the village with them.
Yeah.
And so it was funny. We finally get them out of the village, and we're leaving, and they just keep fucking shooting at us as we're leaving. And so we dismounted and we fucking chased them. We had our gunners pulling security, and I remember putting together a 4-man team. It took me like 10 minutes because these fucking idiots didn't know what I was saying to them. So I had to run over to their truck, pull them out of there. What are those 12-man trucks in Afghanistan?
Is it the MATV or the Max Pro?
The MRAP.
The Max Pro or the...
It was an MRAP, they called it. I don't know. But they could fit like 8 guys.
There's like benches in the back. Yeah, it's the Max Pro.
So I pulled out 2 of those guys. I had 2 guys with me, and we were going to meet up with our senior chief, who's a SEAL, and those other SEAL team guys.
Kind of knows what he's doing in this situation.
Yeah. But I remember like they were like fucking so far ahead of us, so they waited for us to catch up to him. I remember getting over to him, and I was just like fucking huffing him. Yeah, I'm like can barely breathe. And senior chief looks at me and he goes, "You probably should be doing more CrossFit with me." And I'm like, "You motherfucker!" But
kick you while you're down.
Yeah. It was funny though.
I know.
But that whole engagement from the time like my Overwatch position got lit up to just finally chasing them, and then getting back in the vehicles and that whole engagement, it was like 3.5, 4 hours.
Dang.
But going back to what I said earlier, like that stuff, that's not the stuff that ever sticks with me.
Right.
That's not the stuff that bothers me. The stuff that bothers me is seeing dead bodies, seeing people that were blown up and blown to pieces, and moving those bodies, and that's the stuff that's always gotten to me. Is seeing the body in such an unnatural state, getting blood all over you and shit like that. But anyways, when I got home, it was 6 to 8 months of just drinking all the time, every day. I would be drinking like Bacardi and Diet Coke, but then also I had a bottle of Patron in the freezer, and as soon as my ex at the time, as soon as she'd go around the corner, it was let me go in the freezer and sneak a shot, because I just couldn't. I didn't like to feel anything, or I would try to feel something that didn't bring me back to just those negative associations with what I had just done. And it wasn't guilt. I don't feel guilty for a single fucking thing I did. So it's not that. It's just knowing like what happens in other countries, and that people just don't respect it. They don't understand it. They take what we have for granted. And, seeing a truck of 8 Afghan National Army soldiers just blown to shit doing our work, that's sad to me. And to know that, like, that's 8 guys who didn't go home to their family. And, for people who don't know, like, these are human beings over there. Yeah. And their families are important to them, and they're very much about their families over there. Yeah. So just shit like that you think about, and that bothered me a lot.
And were you, I just kind of assume here, correct me if I'm wrong, based off kind of just your upbringing, and probably weren't very comfortable, like, calling up a guy like Mike or whatever and being like, "Hey man, I'm not doing good." Yeah. Because you were afraid probably of judgment, right?
At that point, yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't have called. I didn't. My ex could see it in how I acted, the angry outbursts and all the, just stupid shit that I did. Yeah. Right. And I was forced basically to go to counseling. Okay. And because for the longest time too, when I got home, I was like, "This is normal. Like, there's an adjustment period." Right.
You're gonna you justify.
Yeah, you can't just go through what you just went through and come home and be normal. Like this, there has to be a period of adjustment. You can't just go back to being Denny again. And so that's all I thought it was. I thought I just couldn't be me for a while. And then I was forced to go talk to somebody, forced to go to counseling. And the counselor at the vet center was like, we start going through my story, and she goes, "Denny, you have PTSD." Yeah. And she goes, you also have PTSD from your childhood.
Yeah, you probably have more of it from that.
She's like, the amount of trauma you've been exposed to has been compounded,
right?
Like just in so many different ways, and and you're being hit with it from so many different angles, and I needed to go talk to somebody that had to tell me that,
right?
But yeah,
did you have any like anger about that, or like what was your kind of, did you reject it, or did you kind of feel almost relieved by like, oh, you know what? Whoa, that makes sense why things are the way they are.
It was more of a relief.
Okay.
It was more of a, okay, now I understand it.
Okay.
And obviously I'm not stupid. Like I knew PTSD was a thing then,
right.
But I didn't think that's what it was for me. Because I just didn't think that I was that guy that could get PTSD.
Yeah.
Right? Like I thought I was like immune to it.
We all think we're invincible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and you want to believe that, but it's
just,
it's not the case. It's
Okay. So that moment was a little bit of a wake up call then, I guess, and like what happened next? Like how did you start kind of working through all that? And then I to also, it sounded like she alluded to your childhood as well. I mean, did you start not just Army stuff, but did you start like unpacking kind of what had happened to you and working through that at this point in your life?
I think at that point I probably still hadn't done enough of, I had done some of it, yes,
Okay.
right? I had started going to the vet center and just talking to somebody every week.
Okay.
I had started going to like also a private, another therapist through private insurance.
Okay.
To talk about just my childhood and all of that stuff. But I was always the type of person that, when I got therapy, once I started to feel better, I stopped getting therapy.
Okay.
Which is fucking stupid because that shit comes back and it comes back with a vengeance.
Yep.
Once you this is just my opinion. I haven't had anybody tell me this. I know it's possible, but my opinion is that once that trauma's there, it's not fucking going anywhere. You're gonna have to deal with it over and over and over unless you consistently continue to deal with it.
Yeah.
And maybe you're the type of person that can, unpack that shit internally and figure out ways to combat these issues and these feelings that you have. Okay, great. Otherwise, you need to be talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I need to be talking to somebody because if I start going off in my own head about like thinking I have the answers, I can assure you I'm headed in the wrong fucking direction.
Yeah. You deceive yourself and kind of start telling yourself.
Yeah.
It's not of anything. Yeah, I mean it's not an inherently like you're trying to be an evil person or something. It's a very subtle thing where it's just like we put a filter on. We interpret everything that we do or are experiencing as a little bit better than it really is in a sense, right? Because we just don't want to believe. I'm generalizing for like the way this happens is it's normal to kind of be like, oh, well, it's not that bad, or kind of explain it away, right? And make the little justifications. And it's like one pebble at a time. But then after a while, it's a mountain because you've stacked so many little pebbles. And I mean, I can really relate to different topics, but I can really relate to that process because I did the same thing in my own life. And I just want to like pause here for guys because that's why you need outside perspective.
Yes.
Because when you're just the one putting the little pebbles, you're not seeing how much it's stacking up, right? But someone else, they're seeing the whole picture and like, whoa, dude, like that we can't ignore this anymore,
Yeah.
And so, and it's not like you failed or anything. It's a human survival instinct. It's our brain is doing in a way what it's supposed to. It's just that your subconscious can't separate what's actually life and death from past traumas anymore because it gets conditioned to respond to those things. There's physiological changes that happen to your amygdala and things like that when you have persistent events.
Yeah.
And so then your answer by default is to just respond the same way every time. And so it's not like you're to blame or anyone's at fault, really. It's just like you just have to retrain your mind, and that's where like working with other people, being surrounded by other guys who can help you is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people are just afraid to even just put themselves out there to even get the help. And there's so much stigma, and I think we're doing a better job now, but there's still that stigma attached to that. And I think, people see that as a sign of weakness still, which is unfortunate of going to get help and going to talk to somebody and maybe perhaps having to take medication. But it's a sign of strength when you can go ask somebody for help, be vulnerable, and, be accountable to your feelings and share those with a professional and get all of the right guidance to work your way back to wherever it is you're supposed to be. And, you asked about, what happened afterwards. It was like I said, it was therapy, but it was also, I've tried probably a dozen different medications for PTSD and depression and anxiety and all these things. And the best thing I ever did about a year ago, 14 months ago, I stopped fucking taking all of it. I don't take any of it. For depression, PTSD, I don't take any of it. I took trazodone to sleep, which they gave me while I was deployed because I couldn't fucking sleep. Mm-hmm. And then I took that up
which
until...
I think it builds dependence, right? Like your body starts to crave.
You can't sleep without it. And so I used trazodone for 12, 13 years.
Dang.
And just, like I said, I kicked all of that stuff. I don't take anything anymore. And I barely drink. And I function at the highest level that I've probably ever functioned in my life.
Do you... Because I know people who have struggled with similar things and like lots of anxiety, trauma, all that kind of stuff. And the fear of like, if I come off of these, I have to feel everything is like really intense. And I understand it immensely because life hurts. It doesn't always feel good. But having kind of lived on both sides of that coin, this affects everyone. This isn't just men. This is humans. Yeah. What are some of the things that you've realized and learned now that you're on the other side of like, hey, I don't take anything anymore. And yes, I feel things more intensely now, or I have to wrestle with some things more intensely, but what is also like the benefits for you from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the problem with me is I was always looking to a pill or looking to some chemical solution to my issues and how to deal with them and how to either circumvent certain feelings or just completely avoid them.
Yeah.
As opposed to now it's like, I don't take anything that allows me to, not feel something.
Right.
Or push my emotions or my thoughts or whatever in a particular direction. Now, like, I'm forced to just deal with everything, and I'm not looking for an external solution.
Okay.
I know that all of the answers for whatever it is I'm going through, they're on me. It's on me. And I got to figure it out. Now, if I start to feel a certain way mentally and I'm just depressed all the time and I can't get out of bed, I'll be right back at the doctor's asking for something. Right? Yeah. But I've gone in that other direction. I've gone in that direction of like, I don't have a pill dependency problem or a medication dependency problem. I'm counting on me to do the work. I'm counting on me to be happy when I get out of the bed in the morning. And that's kind of where I've gotten to, as opposed to just, I got to talk to my VA doctor because, this isn't working. I need to try something new. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm at. What
are some things that you've started like doing or implementing that are helping you kind of like on a daily basis to just not need that anymore?
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is, working out's always been a big one. Okay. I've been working out since I was 18.
Well, you're looking 41. A little small. So.
I know. But yeah, just working out. I work out a lot. Writing my book's been very helpful. And most recently, just over the last few months, doing my podcast has been, it's people don't understand, you do, but it's time consuming.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort that goes into it. We don't just sit down and do this shit. Like, there's a lot of behind the scenes work and preparation and, different things that go into it. But, for me, it's I go to the gym. I make sure I do that every day. That gets me started in the morning. That gets me going. Gets my mind in the right place.
Right.
And, I walk the dog outside every day for a mile or two.
Yeah.
Me and my girlfriend walk the dogs. So, I'm outside. I'm getting the sun exposure, which is helpful. Mm-hmm. I'm getting the fresh air, even if it's the winter, whatever. And so, I don't know. I just feel like I have all of these other things that are keeping my mind in just a positive direction. And, I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it other than that.
Yeah. What would be your like top recommendation for someone listening who's like, maybe I'm in a similar boat. Maybe they're on medication right now, but they wanted to come off, but they're kind of scared of it or worried about what the effects would be. Like, what would your, just from your experience, what would your advice to them be?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't just come off your medication without talking to a doctor. I did that. I don't think that's the right way to do it. It's obvious. I did that.
I think you're supposed to taper down.
You
right?
are. I said, fuck it. I'm off of all of it. Because I would either take a pill, it would make me gain weight. I would take a pill, it would make me lose weight. I would just, whatever. It just didn't, it wasn't working. I couldn't find the right balance with medication.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what I haven't tried? I haven't tried fucking taking nothing. So that's what I'm going to do. And again, I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
But I do recommend talking to a doctor, seeing how you can wean yourself off of it, if they recommend it, right? Do you recommend I come off medication? Because if a doctor says no, then maybe you just need to reevaluate. Maybe you just need to talk to somebody else.
Right.
I fired therapists that I didn't think were good for me or giving me the right advice. I did it last year. I thought she was full of shit. And we're talking about a Harvard-educated doctor.
No, doesn't mean what he
She teaches at Harvard. She went to Harvard. And I just finally was just like, you know what? This lady...
Maybe that's the problem.
At first, I loved her, but I got to the point where I was like, you know what? This lady's got to go. But, like, talk to somebody that you're getting something... They're not just a great doctor because they have the fucking education.
Right.
Seek out a good doctor.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that, right? Talk to somebody who understands you. Talk to somebody who, you feel safe with.
Yeah. There should be rapport there.
100%.
Yeah.
Don't just kick the medication like I did, but talk to a professional about maybe kicking the medication. Okay. Go to the gym. If you're not working out, then there's a problem. Like, you have to work out. You have to push your body. When you start pushing your body physically, it goes into all of these other traits and characteristics that are just so important.
Yeah.
The biggest one being delayed gratification.
Yep.
If you can start a workout routine knowing that, like, maybe I'll look and feel the way I want, maybe I won't. But if I don't do the work, it definitely won't happen.
Right.
So that's the idea. You got to focus on delaying that gratification, get in the gym, get your mind right?
Yeah.
Discipline. If you're working out consistently, you have discipline.
Yep.
That's going to trickle into other aspects of your life because now you're going to start seeing the results of your body. Wait a second. I put in all these habits in place. I'm working out. My muscles are growing. I'm starting to look pretty fucking good. Guess what? If I do that at work, will my production be better?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm in a sales job like I am, if I start working harder and doing the things I'm supposed to do, am I going to make more money? Probably.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I always tell people to start, because I think it translates into so many more greater things as far as, just not just physically, but mentally.
Right.
I think that's the catalyst to get people going is physical exertion.
I would agree. Yeah. I think it's a great medicator.
What I'm not, and what I'm tired of seeing, I'm tired of seeing the routine guys. You don't need to wake up every day and fucking journal, and then get in the fucking ice bath, and then go work out, and then go do a sauna, and then. You don't need a 3-hour fucking routine in the morning, and chances are you don't have the time for that shit.
Right.
You need, maybe
some
one or
basics.
two of those things, right? Maybe journaling is just, you really get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
Then guess what? You need to journal.
Right.
You're getting something out of it. But you're not getting the same level of satisfaction and the same return on that investment out of every single one of those fucking things.
Right.
I don't care who you are. You don't need to do all that. So I'm sick of seeing all that kind of shit online about the routines and the fucking everything.
Yeah.
Just, pick one or two different things.
Start simple.
That are going to be highly beneficial to you. If you work yourself up to a place where, you know what, you can do all those things and they become important to you and you need them all, fine. Do what you got to do.
Right.
I'm not going to, but no, you don't start there. Like, some guys, like, they'll dive into, all right, this is my routine and it's fucking 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. And it's like, okay, I can't get behind that because I just don't think it's beneficial.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's realistic.
It can become over. It's like an extra burden as opposed to what the discipline is supposed to be is to liberate you from the negative things, right? But it just becomes one more thing on the pile. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing it for the wrong reasons at that point.
Yeah,
but
exactly. 100%.
Denny, I'm wondering if we can be a little bit vulnerable about some of what we talked about last night a little bit, because as it relates to kind of like your marriage and some of the mistakes you've made. Because, elephant in the room, you're not a father. That, that was a big element of it. And I'm not going to push you farther than you want to go, but I think there's a lot to your story that I think a lot of men can relate to. And it's a good, in a lot of ways, it's like a word of caution to younger guys to like really take this stuff seriously because, to the ultimate point of being the standard, right? a lot of these things, you have to be the standard first. To get the things we want in life, you have to rise first and mold yourself first, and then those things come as a result of that, right? It's not, there's no promise, there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to share some of kind of your story leading up to your divorce and things like that, I think there's a lot with your story, with all you've been through and all the mistakes you made and all that kind of stuff, that really highlights for people how, like, it's never too late. There is always redemption if we're willing to be humble and work back towards it. And like, I'm knowing you a lot better now, having spent time with you and talking about these things. Like, it's very obvious to me that, like, it's not an act, right? You are a man who's changing his life, himself, one day at a time, which is all we can do. So as much as you're willing to share, I don't want to push you outside of what you want to talk about, but, you know, I think there's a lot of value there for single guys, husbands, fathers, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just generally speaking, you know, when it comes to just me and like relationships, I think that, you know, how I grew up has made it hard just my entire life to be vulnerable. Yeah. To really show affection to really the people I love the most. And so, you know, I've always struggled to show that proper level of affection to the person I'm in a relationship with, whether it's, you know, it can be painful sometimes just to give a hug. It can be painful to receive a hug. And, you know, I think that it's...
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by painful?
It's hard for me to show that vulnerability of...
Well, does it feel like unsafe or uncomfortable? What type of
I think the issue I always had was I've never... Just given how I grew up and women and my mother, and I never trusted a woman, right? I never felt safe in feeling like I wasn't going to get let down by the woman in my life, whoever that was.
Yeah.
Now, my aunt, who adopted me, did her very best. You know, she's incredible. But I don't think I ever really I never opened up to her either. I've never had that capacity to fully embrace the love from any woman in my life.
So you've just kept your guard up because you had to when you were younger.
And it's really wild to think that that's the type of shit you carry into adulthood. Yeah. It's almost like, how the fuck did you not deal with that shit? And now why are you now dumping all these empty feelings or these lack of feelings onto somebody else? And it sucks.
Well, to answer your question is, again, it's especially with childhood trauma. So it's called like the survivor man syndrome, right? Or your inner child. And this is like what happens to the human mind, right? Is you're a child in a situation dealing with an adult situation that doesn't have the tools to handle what an adult could handle, right? And so then you create these survival mechanisms. At the time, you needed them because your childlike mind couldn't handle these situations. And so then the brain realizes, oh, well, this worked once, so I'm going to keep doing it every time something similar happens or feels similar because it worked once, right? And it's going to keep working. And so then it solidifies that that's the only answer. And so then, what you're alluding to, it's exactly my story. Same thing, right? I walked into all these situations and started showing up as the wounded teenager version of myself because that's where I was stuck emotionally. Yeah. And that was my response to everything. And, you know, lo and behold, didn't work out very good for me. But, like, that's how it happens. So it's not like, it's not a failure. Your brain did what it's supposed to do. So, like, I want to just make this very clear for anyone listening, and maybe you're feeling down on yourself for, like, mistakes and things like that. Like, okay, yeah, of course we don't want those things to happen, and we wish we could take them back, right? But we also need to have some understanding that, like, we didn't just wake up one day and become a bad person or whatever. It's like there's years of conditioning that the brain is latching onto to protect you. It's just, it's the wrong tool in the wrong situation now. You don't need that anymore. And so there's this concept where you have to essentially talk to your inner child in real time when this, whatever the stressor is making you feel that similar thing, and say, hey, you know, for me, hey, little George, it's okay now. Like, you're not going to be abandoned. You're not going to be rejected. Adult George is here. You can go back to where you belong now, you know, and show up as a different guy. And that's, I mean, for me, that's like over a decade in the making to be able to do that, right? But it sounds like you have a very similar experience to me with that. And so I wanted to just kind of set for everyone that you're not a failure if you're struggling with that.
No, yeah, absolutely not. And I've had therapists say this something similar, like, yeah, Denny, that's just your 13-year-old self kind of reacting to an adult situation and all these things. But beyond just like not being able to feel and express the proper emotions to the people that you love the most, it's you start seeking external outlets for validation and, feeling good enough. When really you have everything right in front of you.
Right.
That's the fucking problem.
Yeah.
Because guess what? The internet can't let you down. The internet can't leave you. These other outlets and vices can't fucking hurt you.
Yeah. The drink's always there. Or
the drink's there.
Whatever.
The alcohol
right.
can't hurt you.
Yeah.
The Instagram can't hurt you.
Yeah.
But your spouse, like every other woman in your life, can hurt you. And so that's where your mind goes. And that's how you start to process things. And it'll kill any relationship that you're in.
Yeah.
No questions asked. And one of the things that, I still struggle with that, that layer of not compassion, but that layer of affection.
Yeah. Like real connection.
Real connection. Yeah. But I'm getting better.
Yeah.
And I'm consistently working on it. And it's one of those things that I have to be conscious of, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I get up every morning, my girlfriend, she wants a hug. Sometimes I'm just like, this isn't my thing. Like, it's just not, you know what I mean? But then I know how important it is to her. Mm-hmm. So I do it. And then guess what? We're hugging for 8-10 seconds, and I start to feel it. I start to, you know what I mean? Open up, like up here.
Yep.
And
do you know why that is?
Tell me, George.
Do you know?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so...
I think it's just a layer
I forget
of
the term.
vulnerability that I'm creating.
If you're in a committed relationship, right, and this is a recommendation to all the husbands out there, is when you hug like that and you join your breaths together, it actually resets your physiology. Your brain, it takes it out of whatever state you're in, and it's like resetting a computer. I swear. It's not made up. So you go and try to take 5 deep breaths with your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever, connected, just even if at first it doesn't feel comfortable, watch what happens. I'm telling you, it's.
I've heard that before, actually.
Like, I don't just do it for my wife. It helps me too, like when I do it. But
and now that you explain it that way, because I've heard something similar. I don't know if it was put exactly that way, but that makes a lot of sense because that's exactly how it happens for me. Like I start to, like I said, she hugs me 2 seconds. I'm like, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, I'm like, oh, this feels nice. This is
it's literally resetting your whole nervous system. Yep.
Yeah.
Like in a good way. It's a good reset. It's like it's restoring to factory settings, basically.
Absolutely.
In the right way.
And one of the things you said something be the standard earlier, and one of the things that I want to call out just definitively, like when we wear this shirt and we push our message, that doesn't mean you're fucking perfect all the time.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're meeting and exceeding your standard all day, every fucking day.
Right.
It's something that you're striving for, and it's something that you're working towards all the time. And you're going to have setbacks.
Right.
You need to give yourself some grace. You need to understand that you're going to fail.
Yep.
But, I've had people make jokes to me like, oh, Denny, you're eating Wendy's, that's not the standard. Mm-hmm. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're perfect all the time. It just, it means you have a set of standards for yourself. You have a process in place.
You have a heading.
Yeah.
You have a destination, right? It's the ideal that you aspire to.
Exactly.
And it keeps you it keeps you relatively on target, right? Because life's going to try and push you left or right or off course, and that's how you keep getting back to on course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make that point because I've had idiots online and whatnot.
Well, there's lots of those.
Yeah. But it's just important to me to call out that that's not what it is.
Right. Socrates said the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. So to define what we mean is true, right? Like that's how we make sure we're on the same page. But I agree with you. Being the standard or rising to what we should be as much as possible is still better than not even trying, right? Like it's drastically better than not even trying, right? The perfection is never the goal. We've all made tons of mistakes. We continue to make mistakes, but like getting a little bit better, chasing incremental improvement. That's how life happens. There is no, you think of like the most successful people in the world, right? And people are like, oh, they just have all this, success, whatever it is, right? Money, sports, music, whatever. Pick the area that they're successful in.
Yeah.
And you only see like the result, right? You don't see like all of the years and hours and struggle and everything that went into like getting to where they are. And that's so we I think this is where social media really leads us astray, is we think like, oh, I'm just going to magically be the guy. It's like, no, dude, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort. Like being the standard is a incremental process.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and over. And
100%.
you know, you're living proof of that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just a little bit better every day.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to touch upon while I'm here too, I briefly went over it with, it was my grandfather. And just how you know, how big of a part of my story he really is. And it's a story of, you know, just redemption, I'd say, on his part.
Okay.
And failure and redemption all at the same time, because, you know, growing up, he was my primary male figure in my life.
Yeah.
Male role model. And, you know, as a kid, I spent a lot of time with him, and it was a lot of, you know, me going to stay at his house, and my uncle lived there, and my uncle was on drugs too. So another situation where he passed away young as well, from, you know, drug use or whatnot. But, you know, I'd go to my grandfather's and I would stay there, and he was a construction worker. He'd get up at 4 a.m., go work all day.
Okay.
In his construction job, come back at like, you know, he'd go straight to the VFW after he got out of work. Didn't really eat much, just go drink all night. He'd come home at like 9, 10, 11, literally rip the apartment apart. Loud, drunk, obnoxious, abusive. You know, tell me I was the worst thing that ever happened, and like just all these things, right? It was kind of a horrific experience growing up with him.
Yeah.
My sister experienced it a couple times as well. My cousin, my aunt adopted me. You know, she experienced it a few times where he just went off, you know, on both of us verbally.
Okay.
He never got too physical with me, maybe a couple times here and there. My uncle would get physical with me, try to fight me, and, you know, so we'd go at it. But my grandfather just had a really bad drinking problem. And, you know, I just wanted to, you know, when he got older, or when I got older, rather, he quit drinking. He didn't drink for maybe the last, 10, 12 years that I knew him. Or I found out recently that he would still have a beer here and there.
Okay.
But he didn't really drink. He didn't get drunk. He didn't act foolish.
Yeah.
So I ended up knowing a completely different man, right? From the raging alcoholic who would say all these horrible things. And what's funny is he would say all these horrible things to me at night when he'd get home, and then say maybe he had the next day off. We'd go get lunch and hang out, and it would be almost like nothing ever happened. He wouldn't acknowledge it. He wouldn't apologize. But I could tell he knew. Yeah. You know, and he knew what he did. But never got that apology or anything like that. But like I said, the last like 10, 12 years of his life, maybe even 15, he was just a completely different person because he didn't have the alcohol. And really just a great story of redemption for him, and just being a present grandfather, loving, caring, kind. Yeah, I got his name tattoo right here. Just such a great guy. But probably the most impactful, you know, negatively and positively for me was my grandfather. And I like to remember him as the good guy. Yeah. But also put me through some shit. But yeah.
Yeah. Again, kind of back to your story, like you personally, I don't want to make you say more than you're comfortable saying, but, you know, I know that you made some mistakes in your marriage, right? And I don't know if you're willing to share any of that, but I think there's a lot of guys who will really relate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go too far into, like, details or anything like that. I'll say that...
It's more, to be clear, I was more wanting you to talk about, like, the way that you started justifying to yourself your behaviors, you know? Because I think, like, last time what we were talking about, that's what every guy does when he's in, you know, it's everyone else's fault type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough to say that, you know, marriage is difficult at best. It's definitely something that takes a lot of hard work over a long time, or lifetime, supposedly, right? It's difficult. And I think when you don't communicate properly and you're not giving each other that trust, that support, that that kind of like ride or die attitude of like, hey, I have your back no matter what.
Yeah.
I think once that type of shit goes out the window, you start looking for external sources of validation. You start, finger fucking your iPhone more. You start, looking to spend more time away from each other as opposed to with each other.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to fall into those vices of, those external validations, whether it's other people, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's, all of these things. And you come up with these justifications in your head, and they're almost always going to be, how can I blame the person I'm with, as opposed to why am I being the way that why am I acting the way that I'm acting, and why am I not taking responsibility for that?
Right.
And I think that is just huge. And I think most guys do what I just said, and they look for those ways to blame the person they're with. And for me, it was always easy because I have my past.
Yeah.
And it's manipulative.
Yep. Because
you can be like, oh, well, I'm going to act like a fucking idiot and do all these stupid things that I know I shouldn't be doing because, that's what's happened in my past. Like I've been let down. And
it's your excuse.
It's my excuse, right? You come up with it and it's terrible. And it's I don't I don't even know how to make the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
It's just it's easy to come up with those excuses and blame other people.
And it just keeps escalating. That's the thing. It doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't. It turns into just this big blame game.
Yep.
And look, I don't think anybody goes into a marriage thinking like I'm gonna be this way. I think things just fall apart when both sides fail to communicate.
Right.
Fail to really have each other's backs. If there's one thing I hate, it's when a spouse is talking shit about their spouse.
Mm-hmm.
If one person is talking shit about their spouse to other people,
right. I
don't care who it is. That shit stays within the marriage.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is.
Right.
So that drives me absolutely insane. And I think that people lose, and I've saw it in myself, and I've seen it in other relationships where, these people just didn't really have each other's backs.
Yeah, you build resentment.
Oh.
Like every time you're talking negatively outside of your marriage, you're just building resentment
100%
towards them. And what we talked about last night is essentially like, I won't go into details because it's your story, but essentially the point was you wanted something, your wife wasn't willing to be on board with it because essentially in her eyes, she couldn't trust you with those things, right? And so that's like the point I want to make here is not about you, it's about all men, is we get the wife that we've earned, Like if you haven't been a good husband or you're not leveling up and leading and doing all these things, being the standard, guess what? You're going to get the reason things suck is probably because of us first. It's not because of your wives, right? Now, maybe they've done some wrong things or they're doing wrong. Sure, fine. But to your point, like we talked about, was when we just own our stuff and start improving that, a lot of stuff works itself out because a lot of it's up here. You're telling stories to yourself that, oh, they're a terrible person, and you're focusing on all these negative aspects, but that you have just as many or more over here in your bucket that we're not dealing with because we want it, because we can't be the problem, right? And the second we stop that and actually admit, like, okay, maybe I am the problem, and what can I start fixing? That's the only way forward. There is no other way to improve any relationship. It could be a friendship, it can be your marriage, whatever, right? But if there's distance that's been built between, that's the only way to restore it is be the standard for yourself, Yeah,
100%. And, we all can look back at things, whether it's relationships or professionally or whatever, and be like, I could have done this differently.
Yeah.
I should have done this differently. I don't think that does any good.
Right.
I'm just being honest. I don't think it does anyone any good to look back and be like, you know what? Well, what if this was different or that was different? And believe me, I've done that plenty myself. Yeah. I think I've learned that it's fucking pointless to do that.
Yeah.
But, just the whole theme of your podcast about being fathers and present fathers and all of that is, if there's one thing I've learned out, in my journey, in my life, in my story, is that, I do want to be a father. I do want to be a positive male role model to a little girl or a little boy. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Either way. But, I know for a fact that I'll be 100 times better than most of the dads out there.
Yeah.
Because I already know just what I'll be giving and what I'll be providing, and the lessons that I've learned, and not having a father, I think puts me in a solid position to be a good father.
Yeah. Because you know very vividly what it means to not have one, right? And the damage that causes.
Yeah. And that's why I love so much about what some of our guys, our friends, are doing, like with the Squire program, and especially the Squire program. That one touches a nerve with me.
Yeah.
And I've actually told Steve, like, hey man, I want to go on there. I want to be like a volunteer.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll bring on volunteers to go with these other kids that don't have a father.
Right, like a surrogate, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well, so, this is something I want to get into, right? Yeah. So you're not a dad right now. Obviously, you want to be one day. But I've had a lot of guys reach out to me and be like, hey, I'm not a dad, or maybe I'm not ever going to be one. That ship has sailed type of thing. But, like, I'm an uncle, or I am a coach, or things like that, right? And to your point, right, like, you needed a father figure. You didn't have one necessarily until later in life. What is your advice, or what are the things that you want to say to those types of guys who maybe have that opportunity? And even for fathers, like I have a nephew, and I realize, like, man, I haven't really been a very good uncle to him. I really need to level up in that, and like I can be a huge role model in his life. It's not about me; it's about him. But
yeah,
I'd love for you to, like, because you lived such a life where that was such a void, right? Yeah. And so to your core, how serious this issue is. Yeah. So, what's Denny's advice for all the guys out there to kind of step up in a role where they can make a difference? Yeah, so it's similar to you. Like, my sister has 2 kids, so I have a niece and a nephew, and I love those kids. They're my favorite. And my girlfriend has a little niece who's only 3. And she's always like, "Where's Denny? Where's Denny?" Like, I love her. She's just the sweetest little thing. And so I love kids. I'm really good with kids. And so I try to be a great uncle to all of them. And then also, but one thing I would tell it's the fathers that aren't present that, which is funny. Yeah. That drive me absolutely crazy. Right. Because I feel like not only do you have this just incredible responsibility to provide and set a good example and really groom these kids into what they should be. Yeah. Whether it's a little boy and teaching him how to, do all these things that a man should do. To train them. Yeah. Or prepare to be the father to a little girl and, like, really be that template for what her husband someday should look like. Yep. The responsibility there is so huge. And it not only is the responsibility huge, but, like, you just lost my train of thought. Well, it's like there's so much at stake, but the opportunity... It's not just responsibility. Yeah, it's an opportunity and a responsibility that, like, you just, I don't know. To squander it it's crazy. Is like, it's one of the worst things you can do. Yeah. To squander that, you know. You have an obligation, right? Like, I don't know. I just to be a poor parent or whatever just seems like just the most unacceptable thing to me, especially in the father role. I feel like, obviously both roles as a mother and a father are extremely important, but I feel like in both capacities, just the male role is just so important. Yeah. Because if you're not setting that standard for your daughter as to what she should expect, right, moving forward, that's a problem. The world will tell her. Yeah. Yes. Yep. And the same thing with your son. If you're not teaching him how to be that man that's going to be that respectful man and provider and caretaker and all those things, then, again, you're squandering an opportunity to really shape someone's development. And I just think that's, All right, closing thoughts. Be the standard. What do you think men need to do better today to start being the standard, regardless of if you're a dad or not? Yeah. First thing you need to do is be accountable. You need to look yourself in the mirror daily and recalibrate and reassess and figure out what it is that you're doing. Did you get better today? Did you get worse today? Did you stay the same? All of those things are okay. But what's your plan of attack moving forward? And how are you going about your daily actions and setting your standards and deciding what's acceptable to you, what's not acceptable to you? What are your habits? What are the things that you're doing to get to where you're trying to get to? Are you executing on the promises and those contracts you just made with yourself?
All right. You told yourself you were going to go to the gym. You told yourself you're going to look for a new job because the new one sucks. Right. You told yourself that, like, I'm going to be a better husband. I'm going to be a better father. Are you executing on those things?
Is it one day or is it day one?
Exactly. So basically, are you setting your standards? Are you creating your habits? Are you executing? And the last one, like I always say on every podcast, every episode, is accountability. Are you holding yourself accountable and doing those recalibrations and reassessments to make sure that you're on track to being the man that you want to be?
Final thing I want you to share on is, you alluded to, you really struggle with being vulnerable and like sharing with other guys that you can trust to kind of work through things, whatever the thing is. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, right? Like, I know that you and Mike are very close. I would imagine you guys talk pretty honestly about what's going on in life. Can you just share how much different your life is on the other end of all these things now that you've kind of moved into a place where you are willing to be more connected and honest and transparent? And I got to quote my co-host who couldn't be here. We were talking about how, like, we don't like the word vulnerability because it's so inherently negative to men. Really what it is confident transparency, courageous transparency. Yeah. And now that like we get it because we're doing it more often, but a lot of guys I think are afraid of that. But how much different is Denny's life now because you've been willing to step into that?
What I find is that the more vulnerable I am or that I become, the better relationships that I have. Yeah. Right? I feel like I'm able to branch out more and just show more of myself and be more comfortable with who I am. Yeah. And I say this all the time. It's such a great position of power to finally get to a place where you're like, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about me. And so much of that lack of ability to be vulnerable is just you worrying about what others are going to think.
Yeah, it's people pleasing. Yeah.
And once you get to a place where you don't like give a shit what people think and you just go about your business and you like really truly believe in who you are and what you're doing and you know who you are, nothing else fucking matters. And once you get to that place of knowing exactly who you are, what you want out of life, and you start pushing yourself in the direction you want to go, you know this because you're doing it. We're doing this in parallel with one another. Like, it's a powerful position to be in where you just don't care and you have a vision, you have your goals, you can see it. You can't feel it yet,
right?
But you can see it up here. You got to see it here first, or
vision,
or it can't happen. So that's where things have changed for me. Is that confident? What'd you call it?
Courageous transparency.
Courageous transparency. I love that.
Yeah.
Right. Once you have that, like, it's you start to show that, and then on top of that, again, just compound that with not caring what people think, and you're good to go.
Yeah, man.
And life just it changes drastically, and it changes quick. I've been at this for 3 months, and I can't even I'm overwhelmed with just the support and the friendships and the brothers that I've picked up along the way. It's been fucking it's been wild.
It just you're always filling your mind with things that challenge you in the right way, right? It's not 100%. A challenge that's crushing you. It's helping you rise to be the standard, right? You're just you're renewing your mind, you're renewing the way you see the world. It's energizing. Yeah. And that's why I feel like a broken record. Like, brother, you have to have a brotherhood. Yeah. Like, it can be two guys. It can be two guys that you just go get coffee with and be like, hey, dude, I'm struggling with this stuff. Can I just bend your ear for 15 minutes? Yeah. Like, that's how it starts. And that alone.
And I've always been fortunate to have that. And something I definitely want to point out is, my co-host Mike, who couldn't be here, that guy has literally picked me up off the ground when I've needed him the most. And he's always been there for me. We talked about my PTSD and just some of the struggles I had. I can tell you that without Mike, I wouldn't be here. He is the greatest guy I know. I love him to death. And when I thought to do this podcast, my first instinct was like, I got to do it with Mike.
Yeah.
Because I know he's such a growth mindset guy, and I know he's such a great guy that if we just do it together, it'll be that much more impactful. Right. And our message will be that much greater. So I just want to call that out, especially with him not being here, because it's just so true. I've been so fortunate to have a friend like him for the last, 15 years. So
yeah, I love that, man. All right, where's the best place to find Be the Standard? Support you guys?
Oh yeah, man. You can check out our website, BeTheStandardPodcast.com. We have gear on there. You can go on if you're interested in being a guest. You can be a guest. Just fill out the form. There's an inquiry form. Check us out on Instagram at BeTheStandardPodcast. LinkedIn at BeTheStandardPodcast. Give us a follow. Give us a like. And, we appreciate all the support and all the engagement. So
yeah, man,
I really appreciate you having me on, man. It's
yeah, dude.
This has been like 4 or 5 months in the making now. We were talking and we were friends before I aired episode 1. So really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Of course, man. Well, I appreciate you making the trip and sharing your story and having courageous transparency to be the standard and show men that like we got it. Yeah, dude. Well, that's Brandon Blinson, my co-host. Brandon Blinson came up with that, and I was like, man, this is. In the same way that you have Mike, I've got Brandon, right? When I'm having struggles or whatever, I call him up. And it's, I'm not just talking this stuff, I live it because, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be becoming this guy if I didn't have that. So thank you for sharing your story, Denny. Love you, man. Appreciate your time here. And I'm excited to just keep watching your podcast grow and change lives and help men be the standard. So it's awesome stuff, dude. Any final thoughts for the audience?
No, man. I just, again, just humbled to be here. Humbled to just be in this setting and surrounded by great guys. We got Seth Gale over there just chilling with us. I love that dude. He's my new guy too. So it's just been, what a great weekend.
Yeah, man.
Just really excited. Really excited. This has been awesome.
Yeah, dude. Well,
thank you.
Thanks for helping make this happen by making the journey all the way from Massachusetts. And
I wasn't going to do this one from on Riverside or whatever. This shit was going to get done in person.
It's awesome to meet face to face and spend some time with you and get to unpack it right here, man. So appreciate you very much. All right, dads, with that, let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.